Hey everybody, Bobby Morano here doing vlog number 3 for secondary general music practices. So, responding to the first prompt, has this class changed any of my perceptions about secondary general music? Yeah, I would say it definitely has. Mostly in justifying a lot of the different activities that I've done or wanted to do in the secondary general music setting. I've brought this up in previous discussions, but anytime I'm creating a lesson, I always think, how would I qualify this or quantify this to an administrator? If one of my administrators walks in and we're doing an improv activity, and there are some students that really aren't getting it, how am I going to explain this to an administrator? And a lot of times I would just end up not trying out certain lesson plans because I couldn't think of a good enough explanation in case it actually did happen. But now that I've seen that a lot of music educators are experimenting with this kind of informal teaching, I feel a lot better about it. Because I've always known that a lot of these, learning things by ear or improvisation or composing, the kids that really get it, they get a lot out of those activities. But as a young teacher, I think sometimes it's just easier to have a really strict plan and really strict procedures for a lesson. That was basically my fear, is that those lessons were too loose and too broad to really work in a school setting. But now I've seen there's a lot of research and a lot of people doing this successfully. I know that I've got something to back these activities up. I also really like the idea of classifying different music learners, because that's something I do. I think we all do it just in our heads. We work with these students. We get to see their musical capabilities and their musical aptitude, and I think that actually trying to keep them classified that way would really be a good way to kind of cater their needs, or maybe encourage them to try something specific that would be up their alley. Another thing I really want to try incorporating more, that we've talked a lot in this class, is improvisation, which is actually what I chose to do for my lesson plan. So in my bass guitar, piano, and drums class, we do some improv, but it's just we learn like a blues scale. I put on a blues track, and we just try it out. People just kind of mess around, but I never have them do it individually, because I always think that kids are going to be too nervous to do it and not really take it seriously. And so when we do that with the bass class, it's you've got 10 kids and they've got 10 basses plugged in, all trying to improv at the same time. So I can't even tell who's doing well with it at that point, but and more importantly, who's not doing anything really. So I think I'm going to really try to make it something I do more. And I have kids do more independently and more frequently, because I think there's a lot of value to that, to improvisation. And that was really the reason why I chose to review the improvisation lesson on my last discussion post. The one thing I'll say is that from my experience, it's always easier to read about a lesson or activity or anything like that than to actually execute it successfully. I don't know if that's just me, but that's just always been my experience. So I'm always up for trying new things, but I think in a lot of cases it's easier said than done. So I suppose I'll see what happens. But also, I think that part of me just really needed to read that other people were doing these things successfully to really not be worried about at least trying them in my classroom. So, yeah. I'd say the biggest thing this class has shown me is the potential for secondary general music classrooms. I don't think that I wasn't challenging my secondary general music kids, but this has encouraged me to try to do more with them in terms of improv and composition, and especially hearing about some of the activities people in this class are doing that sound really awesome. So thank you guys for sharing those. So my chief inspiration for this lesson, as I said, something I want to incorporate in my secondary general music classes is improvisation. So I decided to do a lesson on improv. This is actually a modified version of a real lesson I did this past year for my bass guitar, drums, and piano class. But instead of doing improv, they got into groups and they did a song that we learned on each of the instruments over the course of the year. And then they, tried to learn a new song or two. Like, I think we did One Dance by Drake. It was really fun, but I think it would be cool to modify this activity, which is what I did, and actually make it an improvisation activity. And it gives the students kind of a chance to differentiate, students that want to kind of be more in the background can play a harmonic instrument, the piano, or sit at the drums, while the kids who really excel are going to want to play, the hard guitar part. And, kids get to kind of show their growth in their own way. Students that are really advanced can kind of go off, and students that have just gone from not knowing how to, play drums at all to playing with a full group. That's really cool for them. So that was my inspiration for that. So I think next year, instead of doing the last couple of weeks where I have students just play songs we've learned, I think I might try having them do some improvisation, and of course incorporating that more over the course of the year. So have I tried any strategies presented in this course in your classroom in the past? If so, what was the outcome? So as I said, this was a modified version of a lesson I did with my bass guitar, drums, and piano class. But in terms of improv, the only thing that we've done in that class is the blues scale warm-ups. But I also do, I teach them about like licks and stuff, just like simple little shapes you can do, or little things you can add in between phrases to kind of embellish whatever you're playing. And we talk about fills with drums, so I mean that's some variation of improv, kind of putting your own twist on it. But I actually do an activity in my 7th and 8th grade guitar class that does blues improv, and from my experience they love it, so I'm not quite sure why I haven't tried it more at the high school level. I wanted to actually incorporate reading charts into class this year, so like jazz charts, especially in piano, but it's so hard to get students to the point where they can actually look at a chord symbol and just produce it like that. So that would be really cool to get students to that point of improvisation. And I mean, once they get to guitar, they can kind of do that, but it's not really the same as reading a jazz chart. So I think that eventually I'd maybe like to do this class in levels, maybe like an intro class, intermediate, maybe advanced. I don't know how I fit that in my schedule, but yeah, so just wrapping things up here, this class really has kind of inspired me to really try and incorporate some of these things that I think are essential to competent musicians, and something that's really good to know, but I guess I've kind of swept it under the rug because I wasn't sure how it would go. So I would say that the biggest thing that I've taken away from this class so far is that people have done it and they've been successful. And there's no reason I shouldn't at least try. So, yeah, thanks for listening, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and have a great week.